Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another WTH Wednesday. I am your host, Jemele Hill, as you see there from the Cryon, the host of many things. I'm happy to be here with you guys this week. Thank you, as always, for holding me down. Looking forward to your comments, conversation, and a great show. And just to let you know what's coming up, um, you know, as the title of this live suggests, we are about to get into it about the NBA draft because too many of y'all wearing the tinfoil hat on me right now. Like the conspiracy theorists, y'all are getting a little too crazy about this draft lottery that just happened. As many of y'all know, the Dallas Mavericks, they got the number one pick. And I have just been inundated with conspiracy theories about why the Mavs got the pick. And while I don't want to say that people are upset necessarily, but it's just been interesting hearing NBA conspiracy social media is back in a big way. I got my friend Justin Tinsley, who works for ESPN. You probably see him on Around the Horn. He writes for Anscape. He's written a tremendous book that if you don't have it already, he wrote it about Biggie Smalls called It Was All a Dream. Just a tremendous writer, tremendous person, somebody with tremendous opinions. So Justin's going to join me a little bit later as we talk about the NBA draft, a little bit about what's happening in this NBA playoffs. But I want to start a little bit in a different place. Oh, and before I get to that, just a couple little other housekeeping things. As you see from the ticker down below, make sure that before you leave here, you subscribe to this YouTube page. Continue the support, which you all have done beyond my wildest expectations, but make sure that you continue it. So subscribe, like, when you come here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time or specific time, as some of y'all like to say. Bring a friend, bring several friends, spread all the news of this to your neighbors, your friends, your countrymen, everybody else. And also make sure that you check out my podcast, Politics, which drops every Thursday on iHeart, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Doing that. And, there's other places that you can catch me. And also want to remind you too, on Tuesdays, me and the homie Carrie Champion, we will be doing a live, the Carrie and Jemele show, if you want to call it that, or as we like to call it, Talking Yo Ish on a Tuesday. We'll be doing that every Tuesday for the rest of the month. Carrie and I, we did one yesterday. It's posted on my YouTube page. Make sure you check it out because we got into it about Bill Belichick crashing out over this 20-something-year-old, the whole younger men or older men with younger women, and also whether or not it's a double standard if a older woman dates a younger man. So we got into it about that. And one thing that my girl Carrie Lanithia Champion is good for is she good for some good dating stories. And so she told a dating story yesterday on our live that you guys do not want to miss. I always think that some of these social media debates that we see all the time about $200 dates and the 50-50 conversation that is just super exhausting is I'm like, this can't be real life, right? Y'all do realize that people just be for play on the internet. Well, the 50-50 scenario came to Carrie's dating life. So she told everybody, myself included, what happened when a prospective suitor asked her about going in 50-50 on a date. So y'all want to hear the whole story about this and just us talking about that in general. So make sure you check it out. Again, it's posted. Yesterday's conversation is posted on my YouTube page right now. So you can, get that whenever you want. But I want to start in a little bit of a serious place before I get to all the kind of different elements that I want to talk with you all about today. And continue to leave your comments, your questions in the chat. I'll be getting to those as well. Oh, I don't want to spend, I got to be honest, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this Diddy trial. I really don't. And a lot of it is for my own mental health, that has a lot to do with it. Obviously every so often we have these cases that where everybody chimes in, I don't think this may not be the most recent one, but the one that comes to mind most recently is Meg Thee Stallion, Tory Lanez, that whole back and forth, that debacle or whatever. It was always so disappointing to me, regardless of guilt or innocence. That's not for me to determine. The courts will determine that. That's why Diddy's standing trial right now. is that I'm continually disappointed in the conversation that surrounds it about abuse, about sexual assault, about violence. Those conversations are the ones that leave me feeling drained. And I wouldn't use the word triggered, but it just takes me to a different emotional place. Now, for those of you that may not know this, I wrote a memoir that published in 2022, where I was very candid in my memoir about how I grew up. As I like to joke, I grew up in the real hood, not the rap hood. And so I've shared a lot in this book about some of the things I experienced, including almost being sexually assaulted myself. I was able to fight off my attacker, and about my mother, who is a survivor of rape, and how that impacted my childhood as well, because it was one of the things that drove her to substance abuse. She's been, clean and sober for many years now, but growing up, she was an addict. So that was something that she struggled with. Wrote about it again, this book here, Uphill, memoir, still for sale. You can buy it anywhere you buy books. And so when I speak about these issues, I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who was attacked, and as somebody who also had to grow up living with a rape survivor. And, this Diddy conversation is that it's so many of y'all. Again, none of us know what happened. We don't know. I mean, we know some of what happened because there's video, but it's people out here defending Diddy like that's their family member. And I think what you don't keep in mind as we think about this case, and as we're absorbing what we're being told, as Cassie, his former girlfriend, is testifying about a lot of the abuse she suffered, I want you all to very much keep in mind the fact that the people in your life, people you may not even know, that have been through abuse, trauma, a lot of the things that are coming up in this trial, they may not have been through it in the same way. But just to throw some stats at you guys, for women, it's 1 in 4 women, or 81% of women, has experienced some level of sexual violence. For men, it's 43%. And I have a feeling that it's probably a whole lot higher than the 43% because, it has to be reported. So you have a lot of men and women who experience sexual violence. You have a lot of men and women who have experienced abuse and trauma. And the level of victim blaming and shaming that goes on in these conversations, there are people in your life who haven't told you what they've experienced, and they're seeing your comments all over social media or seeing how you're talking about this trial, and they'll never tell you, just based off that. This is the entire reason that a lot of people do not come forward. And I know there can be other factors, because especially when you're dealing with somebody, you're dealing with a very famous, powerful person like Diddy, it can be very different. But the dynamics of a lot of those things that we're seeing in this trial are dynamics that take place between people who don't nearly have as much money. Domestic violence is something that has definitely impacted my own family. One of my play aunties, we have those in our community. She's no longer with us right now, is because she died at the hands of her abuser. And growing up, I mean, she was in multiple abusive relationships. So when you understand anything about abuse and the dynamics of power, then you stop asking questions like, why didn't she just leave? And just here's another little fun fact about that, is that 75% of in that period where women, or people, I'll just say people, when people try to leave an abusive partner during the separation process or after they leave, 75% of the homicides occur related to domestic violence in that dynamic. When they leave or when they try to leave, that's when 75% of people are killed. That's when it happens. And so I'm not saying, that we can't discuss it. That's not what I'm saying. But I think we need to be a lot more responsible with how we discuss these things, because the survivors, the people who have had to live through this trauma, are watching this. The people who have thought about coming forward, they're watching this. The people who want to tell you that something has happened to them, they're seeing your comments. So because of that, these are the things that prevent them from coming forward and feeling comfortable about exposing what's happening. This is what keeps them from reporting. Because look, as much as people like to say that they would have a different opinion, or that people who are abused, that they should come forward. It doesn't matter if a woman comes forward right away. Doesn't matter if a woman comes forward 10 years later, 5 years later, a woman or man. So let me be clear, because I want to also make sure that we understand that abuse is something that's not limited to women. Boys and men experience it as well. And even in them seeing how women are talked about who claim and allege abuse, that's enough to keep them silent. And it's going to be worse for them in some respects, because they're boys and men. And there's this expectation that they're less of a man if they didn't protect themselves. And so that's just my long-winded way of saying to you guys, like, we need to watch our conversations more carefully, because there are people who, with this trial being in the news, that are being re-traumatized all over again and thinking about their experiences. And we need to be a little more mindful and a little more sensitive to those victims as well. And so I just hope you guys, just kind of keep that in mind. I don't want to, keep things, definitely too heavy, for sure. But, I wanted to make sure that was like on my heart, and I wanted to make sure that I got that off my chest. All right. In a moment now, Justin Tinsley will be joining. I'm kind of looking for him in the queue here. He'll be joining as we talk about this NBA draft, which didn't quite go the way a lot of people thought it would go. I think everybody, maybe you thought it was the Wizards, maybe you thought it was the Jazz, that they would be the ones that would be, probably getting the number one pick, because you're thinking about their record, right? And lo and behold, that is not what happened. What happened is the Dallas Mavericks, they wound up getting the number one pick through the NBA lottery. And it was extremely shocking to a lot of people, given the fact that the Mavericks had a 1.8% chance of getting the number one pick. They were in the play-in tournament. But I want to remind people that the Atlanta Hawks, who also were in the play-in tournament, they also got the number one pick last year. And so this has created a lot of conversation about what actually happened in this lottery. Was the fix in? I mean, I want you guys to chime in with your comments, because that seemed to be the direction that everybody was going, that the fix was in, that Dallas got this number one pick because they traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers. And the NBA said, you know what, since you took that massive L by trading a 26-year-old who last year in the NBA playoffs was the leading scorer in the playoffs, because you did that and set up this marquee franchise, one of the most important franchises in the NBA, you set them up for another decade. Tell you what we going to do, Dallas Mavericks. We going to set you up with the number one pick in the NBA draft. Be honest. How many of y'all actually believe that? How many of y'all believe that? I can't wait to post some of your comments. But before I get to what you guys have to say, another important person that I think you guys need to listen to on this matter, my man, Justin Tinsley, a.k.a. Young Phelps. There's a behind why I called him that. I actually had the pleasure of watching Justin Tinsley try to learn how to swim. He was trying to defy the stereotype.
Yeah.
Black folks can't swim.
We had an Olympic gold medalist out there with us, Jemele, and I still didn't learn.
You still didn't learn. And have you been back, Justin? Have you been back to the water since?
Well, I've been back. Now, swimming, you know what I mean? You know, like most black people, we'll get in the pool with a little drink, do a little dance while we in there. But
you ain't like swam.
Oh, no. Okay. No. I sorry to disappoint you, homie.
That's okay. Listen, it's not for everybody, but I will say this, if I may get serious for 10 seconds.
Yes.
Justin, you have kids.
Yes.
Learn how to swim. All right.
Well, I do have them in swim classes. So I go to swim classes with them. So I'm hoping that I pick up on something.
Get your ass in the water. Ain't no pick it up. Get your ass in the water. And
look. It's baby steps over here.
Okay. You know what I mean? All right. I got you. I'll stay on you. Off channel.
Please do.
So as I mentioned, and for those who don't know, Justin Tinsley is a fantastic writer for ESPN. You can see him all the time on Around the Horn. He also writes tremendous essays and voices them that you often hear on SportsCenter and other ESPN platforms. And before I forget, of course, I told my husband that you were joining me for this live, and he was like, tell Justin anytime he wants somebody to teach him about hip hop to let me know.
Well, I won't be calling him, but we can gladly debate about it.
Yes, he definitely wants to debate about it, but that'll come at some point, I'm sure, in the near future. But let's start with the biggest NBA news, or at least I should say off the court. The fact that the Dallas Mavericks they got the number 1 pick in the draft lottery. Justin, are you with the legion of folks who believe this was all a setup? This was all rigged for the Mavs to get this pick?
You know, the short answer is no, because I refuse. Have I believed in conspiracy theories before? Of course I have. Have I believed in conspiracy theories regarding the NBA draft? Of course I have. And, you know, I was having a conversation with a really good friend of mine the other day, and he said something to me. He was like, Tens, this is America. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. If you're not scamming, you're not in business. And I'm like, what does that mean? He was like, I'm not saying that they rigged it, but I'm not saying that they didn't rig it. And so
what does that mean?
That's what I'm asking. Like, what is it? So is it yes or no? Did they rig it or not? And he was just like, you tell me. I'm like, see, that's the problem with black folks. You don't ever answer the question.
See what I'm saying?
So I'm going to answer the question for you. Do I think it's rigged? No, just because there's so many other factors that go into play with this.
Exactly.
Like, there's so many other companies that are invested in this. And if somebody was to bring about a lawsuit that says collusion, says, hey, you conspired for the Mavericks to get this pick, or the NBA conspired for the Knicks to win the lottery in '85 to get Patrick Ewing, or the Cavs to get LeBron. Yes, I understand the track record with that, but you also have to understand we can point out specific examples for this because it doesn't happen every year. And I think the thing, Jemele, with conspiracy theories is, and again, I believed in some, quite a few conspiracy theories over the course of my life. But the thing with those are they help you feel some sense of power in a situation where you don't have power. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way that the Dallas Mavericks, who had a 1.8% chance to get the number 1 pick in the 2025 NBA draft, get the number 1 pick, unless it's something funny going around. Look, I'm still of the belief that on the Bomb First intro on the Machiavelli album that it says Suge shot me. You know what I mean? I still believe that. But, I've done some research over the years. I've looked into those situations. I'm like, well, maybe that's just my mind playing tricks on me, to quote the Ghetto Boys. But to answer your question, I understand why people think that, but no, I don't think it's rigged.
Okay, so this is what I need people to realize is if you are feeling right now like the NBA rigged this for the Dallas Mavericks, you know who you need to blame? You need to blame the Philadelphia 76ers. And that is because when the Philadelphia 76ers did trust the process and basically tanked for 3 years, okay? Yeah. They tanked for 3 years. The NBA said, we can't have that. We can't have a race to the bottom. It guts the integrity of the product. It gives people and teams too much incentive to do this. So they changed the mathematical configuration in 2019. I hope y'all are hearing me. They changed it so that instead of the team with the worst record having a 25% chance of getting the number 1 pick, they only now have a 14% chance. Now, look, Tens, I'm a Pistons fan.
Right.
Until this year, we've been in the darkness. Dude, we had the worst record for 3 years in a row. We picked 5th.
Yeah.
We picked 5th every time. Now we got, with K, we got number 1. We got number 1 with K.
Okay, yeah.
Then we got Asar Thompson. We got Jay Nivey. Like, we were able to and the one that hurt was Asar Thompson, because that was the Victor Wembanyama year. Okay.
Yeah.
But my whole point is that the NBA did this so that teams wouldn't tank. They created the play-in tournament for the same reason, so that there wouldn't be this race to the bottom. And it's like, people don't want to listen to logic. They just want to believe like, oh no, it's rigged. Like, why? What would be the possible incentive to hook Dallas up? I could see if it was LA. I could see if it was New York. I could even see if it was Miami. Why would they want to hook Dallas up?
And especially too, it's like they'll have Kyrie coming back next year. They'll have a fully healthy Anthony Davis. And there's rumors that they want to go after Kevin Durant. They were going to be fine regardless of all this. So I get you. Look, I'm in DC. You know, the Washington Wizards.
Oh, I know they mad. Here. They mad, right?
Oh man, you talk about, like you said, with Detroit, y'all were dark for so long. We're in DC with all the other stuff in DC that's going on. I know what podcast I'm on, so we can talk about that too. And look, if you want to talk about the NBA draft being rigged, that's no different than saying the election was rigged. You know what I mean? Like we know how this process works. So I just go back to the point that I had, Jemele. It gives, and I understand it. I'm not knocking anybody that, you know, subscribes to it, because this is classic barbershop lingo right here.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It's the lonely barber in the corner that brings up a point of conversation, and then next thing you know, the entire barbershop is debating about it. But I will say this, Jemele. So we're having all these conversations about, is the draft rigged? Is it not? Dallas, whatever. Cooper Flagg, Giannis floating out there is the big trade piece. You know who sees all this and notices, you know what? Maybe we can bank off of this a little bit. It's the NFL. It's the NFL. The NFL is going to say, what if we implemented a draft lottery?
Oh, God.
What if we had our own special where we could show the top 17, 18 teams who didn't make the playoffs? Can you imagine?
If there was ever a sports league with main character syndrome, it is the NFL. Oh my God. Don't give them any ideas.
Look, they already took over. Now, I ain't gonna say took over yet, but the Christmas, look at them. They got the Chiefs and Cowboys. I mean, excuse me, no, it's the Cowboys and Commanders on Christmas. But I'm sorry, I didn't want to derail the conversation, but no, I don't think it's rigged.
Okay, so with that being said, they got the number one pick. We know that everybody has seen this as the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes.
Yep.
They keep the pick, or as most have suggested, should they go after Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Here's that's the really good question, because Dallas, and God bless them, because they pretty much deserve it after the conversation that they've had the last couple of months. I don't think you could go wrong either way. I think the question is, what do you have to give up outside of, you know, AD and Kyrie? Because you're going to have to give up the farm, and is giving up the farm worth it to get Giannis? Obviously, Giannis is still very much in his prime, but we've seen teams, Jemele, make these big trades for these big superstars, and that basically have to gut their franchise to get that player, and then it doesn't work out. Just because you trade for a superstar, it doesn't mean that you're going to get an NBA championship in less than a year when the finals come back around in June. So if you're asking me, honestly, you come back, you get a fully motivated Anthony Davis. You get Kyrie, who will hopefully be, you know, healthy by the start of the season, and you put a Cooper Flagg in that mix, who already has experience playing against the NBA players. Because remember, he played in that scrimmage against Team USA last year, and he walked away wowing everybody. So honestly, I'm not mad, and I pretty much agree with the Dallas Mavericks decision, saying, like, you know, we're not going to trade the pick. And they said, like, yeah, we don't know if we're going to take Cooper Flagg. It's like, all right, bro, like.
They can't do this to their fans. Like, you can't go from trading Luka Doncic to then starting to get cute.
Right.
Like, take Cooper Flagg. All right.
Like, on, bro. We know who you are. We know who you are. Exactly. Don't mess around and take Justin Tinsley with the first pick. Then they're gonna move the ship. The Dallas Mavericks will be the Seattle Supersonics real quick.
But I agree with you, Tinsley. I think they should keep the pick and build around Cooper Flagg. Listen, I get the temptation, but like you, I worry that you would have to give up too much. And listen, I'm not trying to put him out the pasture, but Giannis is 30 years old. All right. Yeah. And I think you have a much better chance of really setting your franchise up for maybe like the next 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
If you get somebody like Cooper Flagg right now, invest in him, and see what you have. Now, I don't know that Kyrie Irving will be back as quickly as you say, but I would rather see that Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis combo to see what those two can do. To me, just don't overthink it. Go ahead, take Cooper Flagg, because that's the decision you wouldn't regret.
No, you can't. Like, the dude led Duke in points, rebounds, and assists in the NCAA tournament this year. The dude averaged damn near 20 and 8 as a freshman. And keep in mind, he graduated a year early. So it's like, and in their report saying that Dallas wants to go after a free agent, a point guard in free agency. So like, this is a team that you get a chance to add Cooper Flagg, who is the presumptive number one pick, and for good reason. You get a chance to add this guy to basically a win now situation.
Yeah.
And you very rarely see that, Jemele, where you get the top pick and you can put him in a situation where it's like, yo, let's try to go get a championship right now. You know, I hate to sound like morbid or anything. And I'm not comparing Cooper Flagg to who I'm about to name, but it's similar to something that we saw like with Len Bias in '86, where he got drafted to the Celtics. And it's like, holy smokes, this dude is going to this team. And again, I'm not comparing him to Len Bias or this Mavericks team to those '86 Celtics, who was one of the greatest teams of all time, right? But if you get somebody like that, who's not even 19 yet, I don't believe, and you can put him in that situation with the Anthony Davis, with the Kyrie Irving when he gets back, and potentially another, top line point guard, Jemele, like you said, you keep the pick and you just roll the dice from there, because that's an enviable position for every other team in the league.
A bigger question with Cooper Flagg is, do you, because you know how that is, the longer you're in the public eye, the more people find things to pick apart about your game, especially a player like him. And let's kind of be real about it. I think there still is, even in the year of our Lord 2025, there is a lot of skepticism around the American white basketball player, not the European white basketball player. But I think there is some skepticism around American white basketball players. Do you feel as if Cooper Flagg will be a generational star?
That's a really good. I think so. Yes, I do. I do think he'll be a generational star. Now, when we say generational, is that like a multi-time MVP, multi-time finals MVP?
Do you think, when I say generational, I'll even make it more basic. Do you think that Cooper Flagg can become the best player on a championship team?
I think so. Especially if you put him in a situation like this, where he can learn from veterans like an Anthony Davis, obviously, who's been one of the better players in the league basically since he got here in 2012. And, people have said a lot of crazy things about Kyrie over the years, but especially in Dallas, him as a teammate has been spoken glowingly of, So I think if you put him in that situation, given his God-given talents, I do think he can be the best player on a championship team. Now, will Kyrie or Anthony Davis be there when they hypothetically win a championship? I don't know. But I think in the right situation, you can help this dude mature. You can help him grow into the player that he's to become. That's why we love San Antonio. That's why we love what they've done with their talent over the years. Is like, yo, we're not going to put this number one overall pick in a situation where it's like, you got to win from day one, even though Tim Duncan did that. But obviously David Robinson was still there. Pop was young. But I think I like the situation he could potentially be going to in Dallas, man. And just based off his talent alone, I know we have a lot of conversations about American-born white players, and it's a necessary conversation to have. But I'll say this. I don't know what the hell they was putting in them lobster rolls up in Maine for that boy. But he the truth.
This dude different. He different.
He's different. He is different.
I agree with you. Like, I think he's going to be, I think he will be a generational talent. And that's why, to me, this is one of the more certain number one picks that we've definitely seen in recent memory. Now, the question I asked you about Cooper Flagg, I'm about to ask you about another player, and that's Donovan Mitchell. Now, Cleveland got sent home. They had the best record in the NBA, and they had a fantastic regular season. And I had a lot of skepticism about the team during the year, but they kept winning, and certainly the analytics and metrics will tell you, based off the number of games they won, the winning streaks that they put together, that this is a team that is supposed to be in the finals, essentially.
Yeah.
But there was something about them that was always curl, not quite. Eh. And I wonder, and I love him as a player, and by all accounts, based off how he's presented himself, Donovan Mitchell appears to be a fantastic person. People have great things to say about
Yeah.
him. But this, I wonder, and I want to hear your perspective. Can Donovan Mitchell be the best player on a championship team? Because I don't think he can be. If that's your best player, I don't think you can win a championship.
No, I 100% agree with you, Jemele, and everything you just said. Like again, everything I know about the guy screams that he's a great person. So I don't want this to be an indictment on his character as a man or anything. But I don't I I think there's only a handful or maybe slightly more of like maybe two handfuls of players that can be the best player on a championship team. That's the whole argument that comes into all-star and superstar. Yes, there's at least 20 something all-stars every year, but a superstar is not just the one who puts butts in the seats, but this is a guy that can be the person that leads you to a championship. This is the guy that's going to go out and get you 35, 40 in a pivotal game 4, 5, or 6 when you absolutely need it. And this is a guy who's going to play both ways. I just don't see that in Donovan Mitchell. Now, if Donovan Mitchell is your second best player,
You can definitely win a title,
gas.
1,000%.
You're
Yeah,
cooking with gas. Like,
he's just one of those guys. I don't know what it is. It's like
yeah,
I don't know if he has the rub off effect that you need that best player on a championship team to have.
yeah,
Like we see him all over the place. We know it, damn sure we know Anthony Edwards is, right?
right,
We know
right.
SGA is. We know Jokic is.
Yep.
You know what that guy looks like. And to me, he's like a rung below those, even though offensively on any given night, he'll give you a 40 or a 50 piece. Like he can do that for sure. But he has the kind of game that I'm not sure translates into making a good team a championship team.
Yeah, and
Hopefully I'm making sense.
no, it makes a ton of sense. And it's not a knock on him because
No.
it's so hard to be that. You're playing at the highest level of basketball there is in the NBA, right? So, like, to be on the upper echelon of the upper echelon of the upper echelon of players, there's only a few people that are going to do that. Now, we said, like, yes, he could be the second best player on a championship team. Like, you put him alongside, we just mentioned him. You put him alongside a Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, that could cook.
Yes, that would work. Right.
You know what I mean? I think that could be what a lot of people thought Dame Lillard and Giannis was going to be. Granted, Dame was a little bit older at that point, but I feel you. It's just you got to have, and again, this is going to sound like I'm a hater, and I'm not, because I really like Donovan Mitchell. I really like watching him play, but you got to have that aura, especially in the playoffs. Because it's one thing to get 50, 55, 60 wins in the regular season. But when you need those 16 wins that actually matter, when you need that moment, it's like, yo, I need you to walk into the building and be like, oh, man, Spider's here. Right. I don't know if anybody does that. It's like when prime LeBron or Steph walks into a building, it was like, look, it's going to be 20,000 people rooting against this guy, and he's just going to use that as fuel for, like, I want to break their hearts even more. And I'm not saying that Donovan Mitchell doesn't have that. It just doesn't feel like
it doesn't feel that way. Like you feel that with Anthony Edwards. Like Anthony Edwards has no regard for human life. Yes. And like you feel that, right? It's like he wants to snatch goals. He wants to, like, I feel like he had a conversation. Maybe he had a monologue in the mirror and was like, I'm sending all these old legends home. This playoffs, they gone. Not Steph. I know they haven't officially kicked the Warriors out the playoffs, but it feels like the Warriors are on life support right now. He already dispatched to LeBron. He's like, he comes in with that mentality of like, I'm taking no prisoners, and I just don't know. And it's hard for a lot of players in the league to have that. Like, as young as Anthony Edwards still is, and as developing as he still is, his competitive instinct is different than everybody else's.
Oh, you can tell. He just has, like, I want to rip your heart out, and I want to do it in the most entertaining fashion. Like you just mentioned, it's kind of like he's Thanos. He's collecting the OG Infinity Stones. He was like, look, I got KD out of there. I got LeBron out of there. I got Jokic out of there last year. I mean, Luka isn't an old head. He played like an old head, but he was like, shoot, throw him in there too.
Right.
I know Steph has been hurt this series, but I'm taking that with an asterisk. It doesn't matter. But like you said, when Anthony Edwards walks into the building, he just has the what I'm about to use a throwback term, Jemele. He just has the je ne sais quoi.
Je ne
You know
sais
what I
quoi.
mean? He's
That
got
is
that je
it.
ne sais quoi. That like, and again, it feels like I'm hating on Donovan Mitchell, but I'm not. But I don't.
But it's different.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just different. All
yeah.
right, just a couple quick playoff thoughts before I get you out of here.
Yep.
We see what's happening between Boston and the Knicks. Very heartbreaking to see that
Yeah.
Jason Tatum,
Yeah.
to have a ruptured Achilles, especially at this point in his career. It feels like a when the Celtics lose. I mean, they're playing tonight. Obviously, they're in Boston, and I think a lot of people expect Boston to take that last stance, tonight. Like
Yeah.
they don't, see them maybe losing at home. But regardless, again, I think it's just inevitable that Boston gets put out the playoffs by the
Yeah.
Knicks. So what happens to the Celtics now? Like what's the next step for them? As it was, they were already kind of fighting this perception that they got lucky. You can't
Yeah.
luck your way into an NBA championship, but nevertheless, that was their perception of the championship this year. And certainly the way they played in the regular season,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, they heard what people were saying. They decided not on our watch. But now we see them at this point, and make no mistake, before Jason Tatum went down, they were losing that game. They were going to lose that game.
Yeah.
So if you're them at this point, you're, arguably your best player has gone down. Like, where do they kind of go from here?
That's a really good question. And I read some reports the other day that even if obviously Jason Tatum did get hurt and they lost the series, there were probably going to be some changes coming to this team, which sounds crazy because they were one of arguably the best team in the league all year, right? And they can go like 7-8 deep in the playoffs, which is ridiculous. But now you got to figure Tatum is going to be out for at least the next 9 to 10 months. And it's clear that I don't know if they're going to run this back with that unit. But also at the same time, too, Jemele, I don't know what that looks like for them in terms of what's a wholesale change you can make that would send them, that would keep them in the playoff picture. And not in the playoff picture, but the championship picture. I think they'll make the playoffs regardless. It's really it's an unenviable position to be in if you're the Celtics. You go down your best player, but you still have a really talented roster. But can this really talented roster still compete for a championship? Because you still don't know what Tatum is going to look like when he eventually returns, right? Obviously, you hope he's still, he's at the level that he was when he left. But is the Tatum and Brown combination, is that still what you want to push forward for the next 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, it's such an odd thing with them
because
it's rare you see sort of 2 1As on one team.
Yeah.
But when you on the face of it, like if you just look at what they have on paper, and of course factoring that in with who these players actually are, there's nothing wrong with the Celtics roster.
Nothing.
No. There's literally nothing wrong with this roster. Porzingis, he's a great additional piece. Derek White, Drew Holiday. Like if I would have told you this will be the Celtics 5 years ago, this will be the Celtics team, you'd be like, oh, they're gonna win multiple ships.
Yeah.
But yet there is something in the makeup, the chemistry. I don't know what it is. It's something about this team. I don't know if it's style of play. I don't know what it is, but it feels like even when they're achieving, they're underachieving. And it just feels that way.
And it's really sad because like Jason Tatum is a phenomenal player, but especially for like the last 2 seasons, right? It's always been like, well, what isn't he instead of what he actually is? And I think there's genuine questions to be asked from both directions, but now you got to ask yourself, like, what is he going to look like when he comes back? But when you look at the Celtics, and it's like, damn, they could win 4 or 5 champions. They can win, I ain't gonna say 4 or 5. They can win 2 or 3 championships. Now we're seeing like Jemele, this isn't the NBA of yesteryear, of yester generations, where you can pencil in some teams for like, oh, well, they're going to win at least back-to-back championships. Mm-hmm. Like there is a sense of parity in the NBA right now, which it didn't have for so long. And to me, I think it's a great thing because you just never know who's going to mess around and be the first to 16 wins in the spring. But it also, when you look at a team like the Celtics, when you do lose, it's like, where do you go from here? Because keep in mind, the Bucks won the championship in 2021. They haven't gotten out the first round in the last 3 years, and presumably it feels safe to say that Giannis will be on a different team next year.
Oh, I mean, I think that's a certainty. But even look at Denver. I mean, Denver,
it's hard.
It is hard, and maybe that just speaks to the era that we're in, because as NBA fans, we've been sort of programmed to think in dynasties, and maybe the days of like dynasties are a little bit over. Although if you look at what Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have accomplished as Celtics, like that holds up well, right?
Yeah,
the number of Eastern Conference finals they've been through, going to the finals. I mean, like they did their job. Like they got a lot. They won a championship, but it just feels like this team that they should be in a better place. And I don't want to say that to underestimate the Knicks. What the Knicks have done is extraordinary. I mean, the way they looked in the regular season, not just against the Celtics, but anybody who was going to be considered to be competition in the playoffs, they looked terrible. Yeah. And, they got the right player in the right moment and put it all together at the right time. It is still killing me to watch them in the playoffs, given that when the Pistons played them, they lost all of their home games to the Knicks by a combined 6 points.
Hey,
I'm just not going to sleep well.
You said it on Around the Horn. We were on last week. Like, that Piston series, of course, obviously, I know you wish it would have went the other way, but that Piston series was probably the best thing to happen to the Knicks, because it was like one of those, they got punched in the mouth multiple times. And obviously, if Detroit makes some different decisions, in the stretch of some game, but like that series basically threw water on their face. Like, oh, okay, look, we the 3 seed, but that don't mean like people just gonna lay down for us. And I think you can see the way that they're playing against the Celtics, because again, like you mentioned, even before Jason Tatum's injury, they were going to win that game. That second half they put on in that game was 8. Did they miss? Because it didn't feel like they missed.
Yeah, and they were up 9, I think, when he got hurt. So and it was late in the game, and it just felt like the Celtics, despite how brilliant Jason Tatum was in that game, that they weren't going to win. All right, Tinsley, I'm going to get you out of here, but just a final NBA playoff thought. Who did you pick to win it all?
Who did I pick to win it all? That's crazy. I think I picked the not the Nuggets. OKC.
Did you?
I didn't believe in them, but for some reason I was like, they were so damn good, I can't pick against them.
All right, that is who I picked too. I got the betting slip in there to prove it. I did it at the beginning of the season. Laid a little money on them. Well, look, Justin, thank you so much for joining me. And as somebody who is also an author, I know you never stop selling that book. You got a copy of the book behind you. You better have one. All right. Look. So everybody in the chat.
It's crazy because given everything that's in the news right now, I know.
I'm telling you,
listen, records.
Man, let this book sell. All right. He wrote an amazing book on Biggie. It's called It Was All the Dream by Justin Tinsley. Make sure y'all go cop it. It is available wherever books are sold. Tinsley, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Now go put them kids to bed.
Yeah, I hear him screaming. You probably heard him screaming in the background too.
I didn't actually.
Thank you, homie. Please bring me on again. I love the conversation.
All right. Take care. Bye. All right, that was my man, Justin Tinsley. As I said, make sure you cop his book called It Was All a Dream. I see a lot of y'all have a lot of different comments about the NBA playoffs that you're letting loose in the chat. Make sure you keep those coming. This next round of the NBA playoffs is going to be real interesting. I mean, I didn't even get to talk to Tinsley about the Indiana Pacers, who, I mean, look at the way that they've come on in the playoffs. I mean, I think people didn't think they were a pushover, but let's be real. Not a lot of people expected them to have been able to punch their ticket to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they look good. And with the way things are going between the Knicks and the Celtics, I think it's no question that the Knicks will be the Pacers' opponent. And in this next round, unlike in the previous rounds, the Knicks will have home court advantage. And we know the Garden hasn't seen this kind of important basketball in a long time, where the stakes are what they are right now. So it's good to see Madison Square Garden reinvigorated, as painful as it is for me to watch, knowing what happened to my Pistons team. But I think that assuming it'll be Knicks and Pacers, that's going to be a great series. I think Minnesota, I think they're going to close out Golden State. Golden State, without Steph, there was a report today. He's been doing some light workouts. They showed him. They think that it's possible he could potentially play in the next game. That's to be determined. But even if he does, I just wonder if it's just not their time. And maybe we should be looking at the very real possibility that that we may have already seen Steph win his last championship. Anything can happen in the course of an NBA season, but or not in the course of an NBA season, but in the playoffs, and certainly things can happen in the off season. But this feels like we may have seen Steph already have won his last championship. They got Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is still capable of doing Jimmy Butler things, but this is the older Jimmy Butler too. And I'm just curious as to where Golden State may go from here. Got the young Lions coming up, or should I say the young Wolves, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I have to be honest, when they traded Karl Anthony Towns, I didn't think that was going to be a good trade. I didn't. I was like, listen, you got to the Western Conference Finals. This was the squad. Keep the squad. But there were the reports, according to the reports, they did not want to pay Karl Anthony Towns a certain amount of money. And when you look at Julius Randle, when he was in New York, he certainly had moments. Certainly was an all-star there. But it felt like he was a little bit on the decline. He's been phenomenal for Minnesota. And that trade wound up being one of the rare situations in trades where both teams got something great out of it. Imagine if those two teams met in the finals, right? Where you have Julius Randle meeting his old team and Karl Anthony Towns meeting his old team. That would be something. But my money literally is on OKC. I put some, every now and again, I kind of like to play the ponies, as they say, like to play some sports bets. I do it, maybe twice a year, 2-3 times a year. I'm more of who's going to win the title? Who's going to win the national championship? That kind of thing. And so OKC was the team I said, feels like it might be their time. And I have to say their last win that they had against the Denver Nuggets, I think that was a real gut check kind of win. Denver, the performance that Jokic had was unbelievable. And, SGA, the strength of OKC it really is strength in numbers, and they have a superstar. They got the deepest team. They got the best defensive team. So I think it's their time. I don't know. Well, I guess if the Celtics go home, because I was thinking it would be a Boston OKC finals, and I thought Boston could potentially win it as well, but put my money on OKC, and so I'm gonna keep it there. All right. So we've talked a lot of sports, but I want to make a little bit of a hard pivot right now. As you know, I tend to talk sports and politics, and so hence politics. Although with politics, with the podcast, I talk a lot about how sports and politics kind of impact each other within the realm of sports. So I'm making a hard pivot to politics to talk about something that we have all seen this week. America welcomed 50, I believe it was 59 refugees, put that in quotes, white South Africans, who have claimed that they are being racially victimized, that there's a genocide in South Africa, that now that they are the ones suffering on the bad end of racial discrimination. So after suspending the refugee program, Donald Trump, that is, after suspending that program, he has found a way to lift the program. Granted, it's basically off his say-so, so that he can welcome in these white South Africans who are claiming in South Africa that they are being racially targeted, discriminated against, and the word that they are using is genocide. Now, let me give you guys some context. I spent a month in South Africa. All right. This was back in 2010. I was working at ESPN. The World Cup was in South Africa. And when you cover a World Cup, it's something that lasts basically a month. And for a reporter, that is a dream, because you get to be in a foreign country for a month. Somebody else is paying for it. You get to cover something that's international, that's important, that the whole world is literally watching. And so when you cover the World Cup, you get to go all around the country. So being in South Africa, I was in Johannesburg, Sun City, Port Elizabeth, Soweto. I went to the townships. Like I took it all in for a month. And South Africa is a gorgeous country. It's a gorgeous country with a lot of beautiful people. And going to the townships, eating in the townships, going to their, they call them shebeens. They're illegal bars that people just set up in their garages. Me, some of my colleagues, we went to those. One of my colleagues, in a very funny story, even bought poison off the street. Story for another day. At any rate, so I feel, while I'm certainly obviously have spent my life living here, I feel well versed enough to know about what I'm talking about when it comes to South Africa. And so there's a couple important things. I'm old enough to remember apartheid and remember when Nelson Mandela was still in prison. You know, apartheid went till 1994. I mean, apartheid had South Africa considered to be the pariahs of the world, you know, ushering in such a racist system of degradation, of humiliation, of wealth stealing. You know, just for context, as we consider what it means for the United States to be welcoming in white South Africans under the guise of they're being persecuted in their own country, understand the context in this way, that there were laws that prohibited Black folks there from owning land. There were laws that made it completely legal for them to be displaced from their land, for them to be forcibly removed from their land for white settlers. There was an enormous land grab that robbed South Africans, Black South Africans, from their land. And once apartheid was over and South Africa elected Nelson Mandela to be president, and realized in South Africa, it is majority Black, not just a little bit majority Black, strong majority Black. I believe white South Africans make up less than 10% of the country. That's how imbalanced it is racially. And they've had a Black president ever since apartheid ended. And so for white people to now claim, after decades, and even before that, centuries, of which they were the beneficiaries of a completely racist system that restricted movement, property, all of those things, and for them to now claim that they're the ones being targeted, it's like, what world am I living in? Now, a lot of this, I want you all to understand this. The far right racism that we see every day in this country, the extremism, the Proud Boys, all those kind of things that we see here in our country, that isn't just uniquely American. It's a global movement. And by the Trump administration welcoming them in, and by Donald Trump saying the reason that he was is because there was a white genocide, is letting you know what type of time that he's on and what type of time we're on. You know, this entire push with immigration that we're seeing, this hardline stance, and I believe as a country, we do need a comprehensive immigration system, right? We do need one that works. We need one in which people can become citizens. We do. We don't need wide open borders. We do not, right? We need to be strategic in how we operate those borders. Definitely. But the push to close the border, the push to what ICE is doing now by in mask and, threatening and intimidating people, snatching people, kidnapping people. What they're doing now is not about comprehensive immigration policy. It's about one thing. And Stephen Miller, who is Donald Trump's right-hand man, has made no secret he's a white nationalist. There's only a certain type of people that they want here. And I'll remind you that in his previous time as presidency, that Donald Trump referred to Africa and other countries as shithole countries. He wondered why the United States couldn't get more people from countries like Norway. Wow, I wonder why he said Norway. Could it be that Norway is about 85% white? So by welcoming in these white South Africans, it's not even a dog whistle, it's a bullhorn about who they think should be American. And I want you right now, I'm going to play a clip from the South African president who has had conversations with Donald Trump and has told him this idea that any kind of genocide against white people is happening in South Africa is absolutely preposterous, because it is. And that's not to say there's not violence in South Africa. It is. And there's some violence that are on farmlands. But the thing is, the violence is the people most likely to be victims of violence are Black. And I didn't say Black at the hands of white people, but the violence is spreading across racial lines is what I'm saying. So it's not specifically targeted to white people. It is just violence for violence sake. And because Elon Musk, the first lady of the United States, has the president's ear, and because of his particular background and him being a white South African, he has, as he often does in our country, has convinced the president and convinced white folks here that you got white people over there being persecuted by Black people. So here is the South African president responding to the claims that there is a white genocide and what he has told President Trump.
49 white African refugees are on their way to the United States. They will be received by the government of President Trump. What is your reaction to this?
Well, we've raised our own concern because those people who are being enticed to go to the United States do not fit the definition of a refugee. A refugee is someone who has to leave their country out of fear of political persecution, religious persecution, or economic persecution. And
that's what the United States says they're undergoing in South Africa. That's why they've opened the door for them.
Yes, and they don't fit that bill. They don't fit that description. And I had a conversation with President Trump on the phone, and he said, what's happening down there? And I said, President, what you've been told by those people who are opposed to transformation back home in South Africa is not true. And I added to him, I said, we were well taught by Nelson Mandela and other iconic leaders like Oliver Tambo on how to continue to build a united nation out of the diverse groupings that we have in South Africa. We're the only country on the continent where the colonizers came to stay, and we have never driven them out of our country. So they are staying, and they're making great progress. It's a fringe grouping that does not have a lot of support, that is anti-transformation and anti-change, that would actually prefer to see South Africa going back to apartheid type of policies. And I said to him, I would never do that. I learned at the feet of Nelson Mandela, and we intend to proceed with the implementation of our constitutional architecture. And I thought in my conversation with him early in the morning at 4 o'clock South African time, he understood that. And I said, I'd like to come and meet him so that we can discuss this matter further. So those people who have fled are not being persecuted. They are not being hounded. They are not being treated badly. And they are leaving ostensibly because they don't want to embrace the changes that are taking place in our country in accordance with our constitution.
Now, realize this. When it comes to private farmland in South Africa, despite being less than 10% of the population, white people own 70% of the land. 70%. So this idea, and I think here in America, some of the themes that the South African president talked about and just this entire situation, we're very familiar with. That even though we've had, we're now on our 47th president, we've had one Black president. We have had over 100 Supreme Court justices. We've only had 3 Black Supreme Court justices. And yet, I could go through every level of government, Senate, House, whatever it is. Black people very much are in the minority. Overwhelmingly, white people own the power structure in America. Overwhelmingly. It's not close. Across Fortune 500 companies, it is white people represented strongly and widely, right? But yet we have a movement here in which they are trying to convince us by this backlash towards DEI and saying that they want everything, on the up and up. And it's like, oh, now you want everything on the up and up because you didn't through Jim Crow, you didn't through the civil rights movement, and you didn't through, certainly not through enslavement, all the things that we had to go through. But now you want everything to be about merit and about all that. Well, it wasn't about merit then, but now you want to be about merit now. But this idea that white people are losing when by every barometer, white folks are winning. And I'm not here to criticize that, but what I'm saying is that the grievance of white folks, see, I got so excited I knocked my mic down. The grievance of white folks is not just something that is being driven in America. This is a worldwide thing. How are you going to, even if you took a quick cursory glance at South Africa's history, how could you even as a white South African remotely fix your lips to say that you're being the one racially persecuted? I don't even understand this. And so, but I think we need to pay attention as to what the larger part of this means. I am going to now play for you guys something that Donald Trump said, and I want y'all to about why he is welcoming in white South Africans under this thinly veiled excuse that they're being persecuted. Pay attention to his verbiage.
Nation in their home country are heading to the United States, right, where your administration is going to welcome them as refugees. Now, this comes as you've halted virtually all refugee admissions for people fleeing famine and war from countries like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are you creating an expedited path into the country for Afrikaners but not others?
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something, but we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of, but it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me, but white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa, and the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible.
He is, again, I know this will shock you, but we have a president that unfortunately often traffics in misinformation. Is that race isn't, he doesn't care that black or white people are being killed, but he's welcoming all the white people, none of the black people. And that is because he knows that it's not true. It's been debunked many, many times that the violence that is happening on the farmlands is not racially related. All right. But that doesn't sell as well as convincing white people that they are in danger, because as long as you can do that, then you will give them an automatic reason to continue to look at people who don't look like them skeptically, live in fear, and you're more likely to get them to sort of vote and act against the people who they think might be benefiting the same way that they are. Right now, as our legislators are trying to hammer out and figure out these Medicare cuts, which in order to pass this $4 trillion tax cut for the wealthiest people in this country, they're going to have to cut from Medicare. And what you notice is the verbiage that the Republicans use, and that is entitlement and undeserving, or deserving, I should say. They said that, these are not Medicaid cuts. They just want to rid Medicaid and Medicare of fraud and waste going to those that are undeserving. So who do you think in their mind that they're trying to present as those who are undeserving? That's why they're constantly flooding the zone with these false stories that undocumented people can get welfare and SNAP. They can't do that. They can't get any of these benefits. If anything, undocumented workers are paying more into the system. They pay $96 billion a year in taxes. And the reason they do is because they want to eventually become citizens. And the way they become citizens is by remaining in good standing, by paying their taxes, even though they're undocumented, as they wait for the possibility to become citizens. See, we spend this entire conversation talking about migrants. Migrants, by the way, who are legally allowed to claim asylum because they're fleeing violence. But Trump wanted to take away money from those cities that house migrants because he said they were getting things that Americans can't get, which is not true either. But because they were sucking up American resources. But he sent a charter plane to get them South Africans, though. But supposedly the whole narrative and the whole impetus behind us, putting ICE out in the street, terrorizing people, snatching people up, deporting people, the whole reason behind the mass deportation was because they sucking up the resources. But the white South Africans not? You sent a private plane for them and told them that they would get expedited citizenship, told them that they would get every resource they need from diapers to healthcare to all that, promised them all of that. That's what so the white people that migrate and they claim that they are victims of violence, they get to come to America. It's just not the people who look a little bit differently. I wonder why that is. Here's a good question. Why doesn't he feel the same way about the Haitians? Haitians and Venezuelans, when they ended or paused, I should say, the refugee program, it was a lot of Haitians and a lot of Venezuelans who were deeply impacted by that, who stood in limbo because they ended the program. Didn't want any Haitians here. Didn't want the Venezuelans here, but he want the white South Africans here that are claiming racial discrimination. I wonder why that is. So I would have been remiss if I didn't get to that. I could be here all day talking about that. But, rather than leave us on a pissed off note, I decided, let me end this conversation on a bit of a high note. How was everybody's Mother's Day? I am not a mother, but I did spend Mother's Day weekend with my mom. She came out here to visit me here in Los Angeles. My mother and most of my family, they all still live in Detroit, as well as my husband, who's also from Detroit, and all of his family. I had maybe the best Mother's Day ever. I mean, I think for any child, one of the things that you live for, especially, every parent sacrifices. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your financial station is. If they have a little bit more money than most, if they're middle class, lower class. My mother and I, we grew up. I spent a considerable portion of my childhood on food stamps. And with us coming from humble beginnings, to say the least, in Detroit, as I got older and got more successful, one of the joys of my life was being able, and not that my mother asked about it, I wouldn't call it paying her back because she would find that preposterous, because when your parents decide to have you, nobody's keeping a tab about it. But one of the joys of my life has been able to be blessed enough financially to be able to treat my mother to experiences that she never would have had access to. And so for Mother's Day, my mother and I, we went to see, I took her to see Gladys Knight, Stephanie Mills, Patti LaBelle, and Shaka Khan at the Forum. And when I tell y'all, we had ourselves a time. We had the best time ever. There's us at the concert. I mean, we got our whole lives, all right, being able to sing, a lot of the classic songs that we all grew up on. I mean, it was one of the best things and best experiences. This was one of the most special moments. So that's Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan surprised everybody and brought out Stevie Wonder. Nobody had any idea that Stevie was going to be there. Another fun fact that I did not know was that apparently Shaka Khan's song, Tell Me Something Good, was supposed to be for Stevie Wonder. And so Shaka Khan and Stevie Wonder, they sang Tell Me Something Good. And, it just felt just really good in general to see my mother have such a good time. She had never seen any of them perform. And, these are some of, her favorite artists that she grew up with, that she made me grow up with. See, one thing about you young kids that y'all don't know now is that you guys don't know what it's like to not have to listen, to your parents' music. See, y'all got like iPhones and you got iPads and all that. So you with your parents, you don't have to listen to what they listen to. When I was growing up, you get in the car, you got no control of the radio. You ain't getting the aux cord. What no aux cord to get, number one. You just stuck listening to whatever they listening to. And that's what you got to do. And so, because of that, I grew up on a lot of like old soul, kind of music. And, as a lot of us did. And I am thankful to have had that musical education, just because that's how I know about Tina Marie, and that's how I know about Stephanie Mills, and that's how I know about Luther Vandross and all the legends and the greats in R&B, is because of the many hours that I spent in my mother's car having to learn some of the music that was important to her. So that just was a really dope moment for me to be able to take my mother to see some of the greatest artists that have ever played. I will say this about the concert as well. I mean, I think I might have been the only person in there like under a smooth 70. I was like, oh, the Meemaws was out. The Meemaws was not playing around. They out there, and they Sunday best, like, doing all the things. And I was like, oh, snap. I was like, they out there looking first lady fresh, first lady of the church fresh. And it was just cool just to see like so many, different like old people. They just out there, having a good old time and enjoying themselves. And as you see, that was the music. So yeah, like it was a really good time, and we laughed and we sang, and it was great. So hopefully you got a chance to spend some time with your mother. And I always say this every Mother's Day, and it's become especially important because my husband a couple years ago lost his mother unexpectedly, and my mother-in-law was a fantastic person, and I loved her dearly. What people who have lost their mothers, what they go through on Mother's Day is, it's tough. So like, as we celebrate and say thanks to our moms, when this day rolls around, and with Father's Day, the same thing too, that make sure that you reach out to those people who have lost their moms, or even people who don't maybe have a good relationship with their mom, and just keep them in kind of your thoughts, because, again, it's kind of tough, for them as well this time of year. So anyway, I just want to thank you guys again for joining me. I always say I'm going to say an hour, and I always wind up just going a little bit over. I want to thank y'all for joining me for another WTH Wednesday. And as I said, Carrie and I will be back on live on Tuesday, as we call it, Talking Ish on a Tuesday. So we'll be doing that this coming Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Talking about all sorts of things. Carrie will have more entertaining dating stories. And as I said, if you didn't get a chance to check us out yesterday, make sure that you look on my YouTube page, and you'll see where you can access that conversation. And as for me, I'll be here every Wednesday, 6 p.m., entertaining you guys, hopefully making you think, letting you into my life as we do on What the Hell Wednesday. And before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Very important. Make sure you like, subscribe, tell a friend. And I will see you guys next Wednesday. Y'all be easy.